Hello and welcome to Courageous Conversations.
We're here to talk honestly about race, faith, and what it really means to love our neighbor at all costs.
Each and every episode, we are going to sit down with friends and leaders from across Kansas City to share stories. We're going to ask hard questions and we'll laugh a little bit along the way.
To unite people, unite neighborhoods, and eventually unite KC. Let's jump into today's conversation.
Hello. My name is Ray Jarrett, and no matter where you are, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, you have reached another podcast of Courageous Conversations. I'm here with my co-host, Gary Kendall. Gary, take it away.
Well, thank you, Ray, and welcome in. We look forward to this conversation today, and our hope is it will promote you to have your own conversation. So please like, share, subscribe, and you can always find the podcast on YouTube, unitekc.org's website, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, just about anywhere podcasts can be found. But here's our hope, that as we talk about things that relate to faith, to race, to loving your neighbor, to city flourishing, that you'll pick up those conversations and take them further than the one that we have today.
Absolutely. So, Gary, we have really a special guest here today. And as always, I would like for you to introduce him.
Well, this is Dr. Reverend Greg Ealy.
Yes, sir.
Good friend of ours, a person that I respect tremendously. And Greg has been involved in a couple of different churches in Kansas City, Paseo Baptist, and now Colonial Pres, the Warnell campus. And more than that, I related especially to what we're talking to, Greg. I just so appreciate your work in the city. So you've been involved in many different things through the years in the city. You're not only kind of a pioneer there, but you're one who's stayed a long time. You got some gray in your beard now.
Yep, some gray that wasn't there about 15 years ago.
That's right.
We've been in a lot of this together, brother.
Yes, we have.
So I am so grateful you take the time to come today and be on this podcast. I really hope that people who don't know you in the city will, and that your voice can be heard in our city.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me in, and I'm glad to be here today, and I'm honored to be asked to be here.
Well, Greg, people may not know, but you have served tirelessly as one of the leaders at Unite KC. But more importantly than that, you were doing this work even before, while we were just a gleam in everybody's eye. So why don't you introduce yourself, your family, and just your pathway to where you are now?
Absolutely. Well, again, Greg Ealy, serving at Colonial Presbyterian Church, been there 8 years so far this year. Married to Selena Ealy, 25 years of marriage last year. So that's why you get married in the year 2000.
It's easy.
Whatever year it is, that's
you can
how
always
you get
remember.
married. Right.
That's awesome.
I wish I'd have thought of that.
Yeah,
Man, that's good.
We got 2 sons. My oldest son, Elias, is in the Air Force, stationed in Albuquerque, New Mexico at Kirtland Air Force Base. And my youngest son plays center field for Avila University.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
So two wonderful kids. Yeah, we came to Kansas City back in 2009 when we landed here. And at the time, Pastor Charles Briscoe was retiring from pastoring at Paseo Baptist Church. And, he was a monument. He was a leader in the city. He was, building bridges between the black and the white church long before it was a popular thing to do.
We stand on his shoulders. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I always tell people I just followed him to meetings.
There you go.
Just asked him if I could carry his bag anywhere he went, and got an opportunity to just to lead in the city. And I feel right away when I got here, met one of our solid friends, Gary Schmitz, when it came into the city, and Gary and I began to talk, and I began to see that I felt like God moved me to Kansas City to be a friend to the city.
That's awesome.
So I just went around having coffee and lunch with people, getting to know what was going on, and finding opportunities to try to bridge gaps as much as I could, because that's what Charles Briscoe did, and the Lord doesn't operate on accident, and put me in that place to walk alongside him, and for him to pass that baton on to me. So
Wow. So I will ask you the first question, because there was an organization and a movement before Unite KC. Why don't you tell us what that was, and just that's kind of some of the groundwork.
Yeah.
We are standing on the shoulders of that.
Yeah, and actually, that Elevate KC was the organization that that initially kind of from this work was kind of formed around. And it came through the vision of a few people in the city: Gary Schmitz, Jimmy Dodd, Gary Kendall, and actually about 50 pastors or so, went to Branson there and just began to powwow about what a city movement would look like. And actually, from that meeting, Gary Kendall was kind of commissioned to kind of lead the charge to build a team. And I was a part of that team with him, and coming from that meeting, I was asked to be the executive director for the initial movement of Elevate KC. And we broke off into different catalyst groups around fatherlessness, human trafficking, education, and racial healing. And so we had different groups partner around those areas, and got some work done with that until God sunset it. But we always knew that was a movement that we needed to have. So prayerfully and over the course of time, Unite KC came to be.
Yeah, I would say that was catalytic in the things that are happening today.
Absolutely.
I don't know that it sunset as far as an organization of its own, but it really multiplied.
Absolutely.
So it kind of went in about 4 different directions,
Yeah.
all of them good in their own way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, like you said, it was kind of like that. The birthplace of the idea, which was actually began with the prayer movement in Kansas City.
Right.
You have Marilyn Griffin, who was bringing pastors together, 30 plus or so, even more than that, years ago, who just had a vision just to pray for the city.
Yes.
And, we would take a group of pastors, for example, we go to Tim Keller's city movement
in New York
every year, and just kind of learn and glean from what other cities were doing. And we found out that we were actually not that far back. And as a matter of fact, they asked us to come in and present on one occasion, one year, what we were doing here in Kansas City. And what consistently we found was that the prayer movement laid the foundation first. The prayer movement established, and then whatever was grown from that was built off of the foundation of prayer. So I think that's one of the reasons why, even with Unite KC, we try to make sure that's one of our foundational principles, is that building on the power of prayer.
Absolutely. On a lighter note, during one of those trips, I sat beside Greg in the back of a van in New York City. And Greg, I didn't know you were a comedian, brother. Greg started telling stories, and I don't know if I ever laughed. I told my wife when I got home, I said, I don't know if I've ever laughed for like an hour straight. But I maybe it was laughter therapy. That day. It was so funny.
Yeah, I was just, trying to help the time pass.
It was so good.
Yeah, I just like hanging out with people. But yeah, it was a wonderful trip, and those moments, there, and being, I think, more than just going and gleaning from Tim Keller's people who he had presenting, the time we spent together, building those relationships, is what I found is the glue, actually, that helps organizations like this build. So I'm a pastor at Colonial Presbyterian Church now, and back in 2018, Pastor Jim West asked me to preach a message in honor of Martin Luther King Day, and the weekend. And so I preached a message entitled "He Had a Dream," and my premise for that was John chapter 17, and when he says, "I pray that they are one as we are one." And my thesis basically was that I'm talking about is Jesus, not Martin Luther King.
Right.
Jesus asked that we be one. Martin Luther King just grabbed the baton and ran with it. And in that message, I quoted MLK when he says, "It's okay to tell a man to pull himself up by his own bootstraps, but it's a cruel jest to tell a bootless man to pull himself up by his own bootstraps."
Right.
And from that message, I had a group of men and women come to me and say, "Hey, we need to know more. You gotta tell us your story. We need to hear about what you're talking about." And so we began to just meet at Panera Bread and have coffee and lunch, and just begin to share my story. And
you were having courageous conversations.
I was
Yes,
having
he
courageous,
was.
exactly. And one of the guys in the group started saying, "Well, what can we do?" We started making a list of, how do we get bootstraps? So we became the bootstraps committee is what we called ourselves. And one of the guys on the team said, "I think we're moving too fast." And he says, "We're jumping to the do without building the relationships." And so we slowed down, and it was perfect that he asked that, because so often I've been in this work and we jump to the do so quickly that once the do is done, then the relationships go apart. Or when the work gets hard, then the glue is not there to be able to keep it together. So that's why it's very important to me, riding in the back of the van, laughing and giggling, building relationships, talking about our families and what's going on. I think is very important to this kind of work, because we're on the front lines for racial healing. You're asking for the enemy to throw darts at you. And in those times, you got to have people that you can call and lean on.
Yeah. We have this saying, we move at the speed of trust.
That's right. Exactly
and
right.
I think what happens if we don't have trust is something inevitably will go wrong. It always does.
Exactly.
And then when it goes wrong, if people don't have a relationship, then they go apart.
Right.
But if something goes wrong in their relationship, they come together.
Exactly.
And that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Building those relationships is so key. And so that's kind of what happened with that group. So we pulled back, began to do more relationship building, finding out why they were interested. Why are you at the table? Why is this conversation about race so important to you? Hearing my personal story and how I, had bad interactions with police, and telling a story about, how I was aggressively attacked by a police dog. And, to have them lament, that's the word we're using a lot now in our church right now. A lot of times when we talk about repentance, which I think is necessary in this conversation, but sometimes people often say, "Well, I didn't do anything wrong. Like I didn't have slaves. I've never called anybody the N-word. I didn't do anything wrong." Right. And it's not the fact that you did anything wrong, but you have to ask the question: did you benefit from it? Do you acknowledge the fact that somebody did do something wrong? So lamenting is me sitting with you in your pain and understanding where you come from and what you've gone through. And it says, I may not have done it, but I'm here to be with you where you are right now.
That's so powerful.
Yeah. It's an emotional bond.
Absolutely.
It is.
Yeah.
That is the one thing that I just got past a wealth of knowledge. And, so I got to see the King movement, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, all of these different. And the one thing that somebody told me was, there's two things, and they said, I'll die on the hill for these two things. Number one, if you don't build relationships in the community, it won't last. Right. And number two, you think that you can probably do this work outside of the commandments of Christ, but you can't. Right. Absolutely. And so, Greg, I will tell you what, you have a perspective that I really want to tap into with our listening audience. Yeah. And so you guys may not have noticed, but Greg is a black person, African-American, whatever, that you go by. He is. But he has the unique experience of being around a lot of people from either what I call on either side of the track. Yeah. And so I want you to speak to the importance of what you have learned from our white listening audience, our Hispanic listening audience, our black, and just how important it is to have relationships across the tracks.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, this began a long time ago. Right. I grew up in the inner city of Austin, Texas. I grew up in around the time where the government thought the best case scenario to help inner city kids was to bus them to suburban neighborhoods. And they, so I was in, the hood of Austin. All of us black kids got on the bus. We bussed out to Barton Springs, Barton Hills Elementary School.
Wow.
And when we got there, this was around the time frame also where they begin like AP classes, honors classes, gifted and talented, and so they begin these opportunities to bring segregation back into the school. So you had all these inner city kids being bused to these all-white schools, and then all the white kids would go down these gifted and talented hallways, and all the black kids went down the regular classroom hallways. And so you literally got the school, you see this segregated walk just happen. Only difference from me is that my grandmother was a teacher, and my dad. So, when kids were getting Tonka trucks and Transformers for Christmas, I was getting flashcards and reading Rainbow magazines and math books and things like that. So by the time I was in kindergarten, I was reading on the first grade level.
Right.
And so
Ahead of the game.
I actually tested into those gifted and talented classrooms. And so when the black kids were being bused to these suburban schools, the white kids would go down this hallway, the black kids would go down this hallway, except Greg.
The only one. There's Greg.
So Greg would be in this group of white kids going to these gifted and talented classes, and Felicia Shaw, she was the other one. Felicia
wow.
Shaw. I remember Felicia Shaw.
Okay.
Maybe she's out there, but we would go down that hallway. So all day long, I had to learn how to exist in an all-white environment. I had to learn how to operate in a space where I didn't want to be just seen as an affirmative action project, or my mom and dad said you don't go in there and you don't act up. You can't be bad because where Johnny, they'll just say, oh, he has leadership potential. For you'll be listed as a statistic. So I had to go into those classrooms, behave myself, operate, and do better than anybody else in those classes survive. But then at the same time, I had to get back on that bus with all the black kids I didn't see all day long and ride back to my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I literally had to fight my way back home into school every day because I talk like I'm white, or I feel like I was better than somebody else. I was a zebra. I was Oreo, black on the outside, white on the inside, all these things. So I literally had to learn how to exist in both environments.
Wow.
And that was my life pretty much all the way until I was like in the 9th and 10th grade, where I started getting, good at sports. And when you get into the sports arena, the classroom is different, but on the field, we all had a common goal to win. And so that's kind of what my life was like. And then I went to Texas State University, which is a predominantly white university, and I wanted to be an accountant. And that just, I was in the room with people that didn't look like me most of the day. And I remember I was struggling in one of my accounting classes. And so the dean of the accounting school called me in his office, and he was old, rugged, Southern, boot-wearing, cigarette-smoking man. He had a ashtray on his desk that looked like a bucket. It was full of cigarette butts.
Oh, man.
And he leaned back in his chair, and he set his boots up on the table. And he looked at me and he says, maybe this is too much for you.
Here we go.
Maybe you need to change your major. And I leaned over to him and I said, thank you. I just needed some motivation.
I'm ready to go. Put me back in the game, right? Oh, my God.
Thank you. I just needed some motivation. And I went back and finished my accounting degree and became an auditor for the state of Texas for a little bit. And then...
Let me interrupt you.
Yes, sir.
For our listening audience, I want you to know, all through high school and through most of college, I was a straight A student until I took accounting 1 and 2. I got D's in both of them, and I said, I did what your guy, he said, this is not the path for me. Can you believe that computer science was easier for me than accounting? I said, leave me alone.
Yeah, no, I couldn't do computer science.
I couldn't do accounting. That's crazy.
But, so then, in that environment, going to Texas State, and then, graduating from Texas State and going to Dallas Theological Seminary, where it was...
How did you do that? Because you were going to be an accountant.
Right. I was an accountant.
Oh, you were an
I
accountant.
was an accountant for the state of Texas, and then got my call to ministry.
Wow.
Felt like God was telling me, He wanted me to go into ministry, and so
Man.
I remember Cindy Solis was my supervisor. I don't know why I remember these people's names, but Cindy Solis was my supervisor in the accounting department at the state of Texas where I was working. And I walked in and I said, I'm moving to Dallas because they were wanting to move me up, to give me a promotion. I said, well, I'm moving to Dallas to go to seminary. Feel like God is calling me into ministry. She was like, well, how do I argue with God?
Yeah, right.
You guys have some amazing stories, the both of you.
I'm thinking about going. It's like Peter
Yeah.
fishing for
Right.
men. You're going to count heads in the
Right,
kingdom.
exactly. He wanted me to count heads. Yeah, count heads for Jesus.
Man, what a story.
But that was an all white environment. So, then got being called to Paseo Baptist and pastoring an all black church, and then in 2017,
But you had a mentor in Dallas.
yeah, Dr. Tony Evans.
Yes.
Yeah, which was actually Charles Briscoe was his mentor.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So
Oh my goodness.
when I was coming to Paseo, Dr. Evans was like, "Oh, you're going to a great place, great man of God."
Yeah.
Matter of fact, Charles Briscoe used to bring Tony Evans into town to do teaching
Oh, really?
at Paseo Baptist. So it was like full circle.
It was.
Like my mentor was mentored
I
by the
love
person in the
that.
church who I was coming to
That's so
replace.
good.
So yeah.
Man, that is something else.
Yeah, but just being in that space at Paseo in the all black, church environment. And then in 2017, God moved me to an all white church
White
environment.
church.
I just sit
Do
back.
you think
and
you were back in school again?
Well, I mean, it was. It was a whole different world. I remember sitting on the front row the first Sunday at Colonial, and after the choir sang. And I just remember looking up and said, okay, God, if this is what you want, But in all honesty, man, when August of 2017, when I felt like God had given me my release from Paseo, I went home that night and I prayed and I said, what am I supposed to do? I'm a Black Baptist church pastor. Mm-hmm. My dad's a Black Baptist church pastor. My mentors are Black Baptist church pastors. That's all I've ever known. Like, what am I supposed to do? And I heard the Lord say, you're not a Black Baptist church pastor. You're my son. Mm-hmm. And I can do with you wherever I want to.
Ooh, that's so good.
And so then I literally sat back and I was just thinking, like, so what does that look like, So I Googled church jobs in Kansas City just to see what would come up. And the first thing that came up was campus pastor for Warren campus, Colonial Presbyterian Church. And the lead pastor is Jim West, who we had been friends since I got here.
Right.
And finding out later on about the history of our two churches, and we had partnered together, painted schools.
Right.
I actually preached at Colonial in 2012 with our What If the Church experience there. So when that job posting came up, I just said, working for Jim, that's funny.
Jim, you heard it here.
That's the first thing he's heard this story. I said, working for Jim, that's funny. And I heard the Lord say, yeah, that's what you're going to do.
Oh,
and
wow.
And so I text Jim in that moment, and I said, hey, feel like my season's up at Paseo. Saw y'all have a job position open at the Warren campus. One of you would even consider somebody like me. And he's text back, dude, are you serious? I say, yeah. He's like, I got to call you back. And so it's funny hearing this story from other people in the room. But apparently they were in the elders meeting. And he's losing it.
What?
He's losing his mind. The pastoral search committee is presenting, and he's like, the search committee is presenting. I just text him and says, I'm looking for the job. He's going out in the hallway. He's calling people out in the hallway. They say they thought somebody died. I know what's going on. And then finally he was like, Greg Ealy's available. Go get him, And so he told me later on that one of the elders in that meeting had a strong sense that they needed to begin that meeting with prayers of repentance and forgiveness over the sins of the forefathers of the church.
Oh,
and
man.
He said, I believe that God used our prayers to open up the door for you to send that text message in that moment.
Man, isn't that?
I've heard him tell that story.
Yeah.
You get chills up your spine.
Yeah, I do
Goosebumps every single time. So, so we end up at Colonial Presbyterian Church, and we start the bootstraps ministry, and about 3 or 4 years into it, started getting some pushback. Understandably, this is different church environment, and you got a lot of people who's not been involved in this conversation before, and just feel like, is this a distraction? You get the questions of, is this a part of the gospel? Are we getting off track? And I just have to kind of keep informing them along with the team that we built that this is the gospel.
This is.
Yes,
it's
sir.
the whole gospel. The
Right.
gospel is the social and the spiritual. It's the heart
Right.
and the needs. You got to do all of it. Jesus, it was feeding the 5,000 at the same time. He was checking you and seeing if you had a heart for him.
Yeah.
It's
That's right.
the whole gospel. But we have to continue to remember that. So we took a hiatus, and tell me if I'm talking too much, because I can talk. I kind of do that for a living.
I love the story. I love the story.
But so we had to take a hiatus, and do some prayer and some searching, because people began to associate bootstraps with this socialist movement.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we said, well, let's pray. And long story short, we came back and decided to rebrand ourselves as Kingdom Oneness. So now we're called the Kingdom Oneness Ministry at the church. It just recently, a few elders meetings ago, after years of the work we've been doing, and we actually now have a Kingdom Oneness team at the Overland Park campus who's focusing on the diversity in those neighborhoods, which is predominantly an Indian culture there. And so it was put on the elders' heart to have a strategic team go off and just pray over, think about, examine what it would look like to add a value to the values that we already have as a church. And so they just voted to add oneness in Christ as one of our church values.
That's beautiful.
At
Isn't
our
that
church.
great?
Yeah.
Isn't that
So-
great? Man.
It's so good. I'm thinking about the Warnell campus and where you're located too, because what's interesting about the story, and anybody who knows the neighborhood would know,
Yeah.
the neighborhood started changing before the church.
Oh, most definitely.
So the church was way behind in terms of matching their neighborhood. But when they brought you,
Yeah.
then you had the ability to reach the neighborhood in a unique way
Yeah.
that they had missed.
Right, yeah.
So they gave them a chance to reclaim
Yeah.
like who they are in that neighborhood.
Yeah, man. We have our events at our church. Matter of fact, just last night we hosted Boone Elementary's Black History program, and I sit in that audience and I look around, and it's literally Revelation 7:9. It's every tongue, tribe, and nation just all represented there
Right.
from our neighborhood.
Right.
We have our fall festivals and extravaganzas,
Yes.
vacation Bible schools, everything we have. You look out there and you're like, this is literally what Revelation 7:9 is talking about.
Right.
But when you do the demographic study of our church, what I found was that at our church is 93% white, 7% other. And it's actually, since I've been there, it was 99%.
You're making progress.
We made progress, man. We made progress. But we're, continually to put that before our church and our congregants to let them know we have to create a space where the people in our neighborhood feel comfortable coming in and sitting in that space. So we try to be purposeful about putting people up front, putting people in the foyer who look like people in our neighborhood, engaging with people in our partnerships with the elementary school. We have what we call Impact Center, which is it's a partnership with the school district to eradicate the homelessness in the Center School District, which is the small school district that our church is in. Mm-hmm. And so we have we offer parenting classes. This through Serve the World Charities. So the Impact Center program is through Serve the World Charities, which is a partnership we have with Evangel, with the churches in our neighborhood.
Right.
And providing housing. We actually use some of our dorm space on our campus to provide temporary housing while the housing vouchers are coming available. Provide food opportunities. We create a mobile resource center because you have like single moms. You think of a single mom who doesn't have a car, and she has to the driver's license renewed. She has to have some legal questions. She has some warrants that she needs to get done before she can get the driver's license. She, all these different things that would take her months to be able to do.
Right.
And when you talk to the principals of the elementary schools in your neighborhoods, they say the biggest problem they have is the transient nature of the kids who are in poverty world.
Yes.
He said, if I start a IEP or EIP or whatever it's called, a program to help this kid get better, and he's gone in December, then all the efforts I put toward him getting better is lost. It's all gone.
Wasted.
So then what can we do? You can help that kid stay in school. So that's one of the things we try to do is create a sustainable nature for the people in the neighborhood so those kids can remove themselves from homelessness. So
Yeah.
Pastor Greg, we could talk for hours, but what is so impressive is that not only are you standing on the platforms of others who have come before you, but you're building a new platform in the community that of service, and so it's not just, hey, you need Jesus. It's you need Jesus, but let me help you with these other things. And so one of the theories that being in this space has taught me, and working with Gary, is that you need three kinds of people. So you do need the non-minority pastors and leaders who have access and who have influence. You need the Black community leaders who can marshal and gather the people in the community up, or in the not in the minority communities, not just Black communities.
Right.
But you need people like Greg who can dance between both worlds. And so they can listen to the needs of the community, and you have relationships with people who can make a difference.
Right.
And so we appreciate you being here with us to kind of just share a little bit of that. I think we're going to have you for like every quarter to come in and share more of your story.
You let me know.
All right.
I'm coming.
All right. Well, hey, with that, I'm going to leave the last words to Gary. He may have one more question. If not, he can help us wrap up.
Well, I've looked forward to this for a long time.
Yeah.
I know most of these stories, but I never get tired of hearing them.
Yes, sir.
And I also do believe it's the coalition of people who come together and they use their influence, whether it's a businessman joining a pastor or a Black man joining a white man, or, as you've both have already said, it's not just a black and white issue. I mean, we're a multicultural city.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
And every day it seems to get more colorful.
That's for
And
sure.
we need each other.
That's right.
And so when we join hands across the divide, whether it's a racial divide or a cultural divide or a political divide, there's a lot of those today.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we've got to reach across the divide and build the bridges. And then that's why we have eventually have a united KC.
Right.
And we still believe, because it's kingdom of heaven ideas, that we can get closer and closer all the time.
Man, that's
So thank you for coming, Greg.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
having me. Yeah, my encouragement is to everyone is just keep coming to the table.
Yes.
Yeah,
So that's why I tell my team as we, in our meetings, just keep coming back to the table.
Yep.
You're going to get discouraged. You're going to get pushed back, but just keep coming back to the table. Martin Luther King has a quote where it says, if you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But just keep moving.
Right.
There you go. I love it.
Yeah.
Very good. So those of you who've been watching, we're so glad that you're a part of this conversation. Now we hope you'll go out and have your own. And if you're encouraging your friends to listen to this Courageous Conversations podcast, you can find them at our unitekc.org website, our YouTube page, also Spotify, Google Play, Apple. And please like, share, and subscribe so we can keep more conversations going.
All right. Well, thanks for being with us on another episode of Courageous Conversations. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Courageous Conversations.
We hope you heard something that encourages you to start these conversations in your own life.
Because when we talk, listen, and learn together, we move closer to uniting people, uniting neighborhoods, and uniting KC.
And don't forget, you can find more stories, events, and resources at unitekc.org.
So until next time, go love your neighbors at all costs.